Hello everyone, welcome back to FinMeUp. Today we are once back with Renergen's CEO Stefano Marani, and it's a privilege. And today we'll be looking at what's going on with Renogen, the exciting announcements that they've recently made, as well as their short to medium plans. So if you are interested in Renogen, this is definitely for you. Stefano, thanks for being here. Please feel free to share with the FinMeUp community everything that is going on with Renogen and all the exciting plans and announcement and what it means. So there's obviously been that announcement with the blockchain and Helium. So Renogen is in the Helium space. So just tell us a bit more and make it practical as possible if you can, please. Thank you.
And listen, a big shout out to all of the listeners and viewers. It's always a pleasure to be on this platform. So thank you for having me, and well done on the song, by the way. So yes, we've been in the news, and I suppose it's probably worthwhile just explaining the journey as to how we ended up with a scenario that Helium is now being associated with blockchain. And I suppose it's kind of ironic and yet fitting at the same time that Helium, which is so instrumental to pretty much every single high-end piece of technology that we have today, it was only fitting that if Helium was going to find its own place in the spot market, that it needed to do it in the digital world. And so we're quite pleased to be part of pioneering this initiative. Everyone would have seen the announcement with regards to our intention of creating a spot market for Helium, and the principle behind what we're trying to do over here is to move Helium into a space similar to other commodities where there is a visible price, there's transparency, and not this clandestine, opaque market that currently persists in the Helium market. Now, this isn't too dissimilar to the trajectory that most commodities follow. You don't have to look back 10 years, and lithium was in exactly the same space. Now lithium is better understood. So I can see that in time, through initiatives like this and other initiatives, we'll start to see a much more transparent and liquid helium price. How we've gotten involved in this and what we did here was essentially to have an offtake agreement between ourselves and Argonon, which is a US incorporated company. Argonon is issuing tokens, and these tokens are backed by a smart contract. The underlying smart contract enables the holder to either store the token in their wallet. Eventually, in time, we'll be putting it onto an exchange, hopefully within the next 3 months. And on the exchange, they'd then either be able to trade that token, buy, sell, do whatever they want to do with it, or they can use it as a store of wealth if they believe that the longer-term prospects for helium are good, particularly when you consider the clampdown on natural gas drilling, and that's pretty much the only place that you get helium from. So as a commodity, if you're bullish on the long-term story of helium, then you can also hold it without necessarily having to incur the storage costs of keeping helium. A token holder will eventually in time decide that either they're going to sell it in the spot market because the price is right, or they want the underlying helium. If they want the underlying helium, the mechanism is quite simple. They notify Argonon. Argonon notifies us. And exactly the same way that the entire helium market trades, that happens 1 quarter before delivery takes place. We send back a delivery schedule. We mutually agree with the end user the delivery schedule for when the trailer needs to arrive for replenishment of the trailer. And once that's happened, the token is then delivered to us and burned, and we issue a delivery certificate. The container comes in, that delivery certificate is handed over at the plant, the tank is filled up, the tank goes away with all that helium, and there are a few less tokens for helium in the world.
Yes, that's very interesting. So at the end of the day, what does it mean for Renogen as a company? The first question. So, are you just, so what does it entail for Renogen? And the second question is, on which exchange will it be? Yeah, if you can just answer that.
It's a few things for Renogen. I think the first and foremost is that the creation of a spot market for helium, we believe, is important because at the end of the day, we do have a stock that's listed on 2 stock exchanges, and it's important for analysts to be able to work out some kind of evaluation for what the stock, not only our stock, but all of the other listed helium stocks too. All of these companies, analysts have to come up with some kind of an idea of what the underlying commodity value is. And that isn't going to happen until there's some kind of transparency in the spot market. And so what's good for one is good for all over here. And that was kind of the initial thinking. The second part to doing this is that it also has a mutually beneficial a resultant contract coming out of this. And let me explain. There's a concept in the commodities world known as streaming. So kind of like you go onto Netflix and you stream your video. It's commodities are almost behave in the same way. The way that it would behave is that your larger commodity houses, and I don't need to name them there. I think everyone knows who the big commodity trading houses are. What they would do with junior miners is that they would go out to these junior mining companies. They would offer them a certain amount of cash up front, and in return for that cash, they would be able to take a certain amount of commodity at a discounted price. Now, typically, those streaming contracts belong to these big companies because they've got the balance sheets and the prowess and this and that and the next thing. For us, a streaming arrangement is an excellent idea because we're delivering a commodity at the end of the day in the future, and that means that we're raising capital without having to dilute. And setting up this mechanism now, prior to us announcing phase 2 and phase 2's capital needs, means that we're showing that we have the ability, and we're setting up the mechanism to be able to raise a certain portion of the capital to construct phase 2 without necessarily having to dilute shareholders. The mutually beneficial part of this is we feel that this is a particularly innovative transaction, simply by virtue of the fact that I'd referred to the fact that previously only the large commodity houses had the ability to participate in streaming transactions, and that was absolutely true. However, with blockchain technology, there's absolutely no reason that the average person in the street shouldn't have the ability to be able to participate in these streaming transactions. And so, taking a page out of Charles Savage's book, he continues to talk about the democratization of the investment process. So I'm going to paraphrase him and steal his phrase, but this is kind of democratization of the whole streaming process for junior mining houses. And I'd like to hope that in 12 months from now, many people start to copy this innovation, and that we start to see a whole new raft of junior mining companies in South Africa using similar kind of streaming transactions on blockchain to interested investors to be able to build their projects. It's good for the country, it's good for us, it's good for everyone, and not just South Africa, but pretty much everyone around the world. I think it's this kind of innovation is important. It shakes up the traditional mainstay of current financial services.
And what will this coin be called?
The coin is called an ARGI.
An ARGI. Okay.
Yeah. So one ARGI is 4.7 kilograms of liquid helium at minus 269 Celsius.
I see. Okay, very interesting. And how long do you think it will, or what's the estimated timeline for this?
So we've opened up subscriptions now, so people can go directly onto the website now, and they can log into argonon-he.com, and they can subscribe, and they can buy their tokens online. The tokens will eventually be developed into a smart contract, and the boys at Purple are busy doing that. The boys and girls at Purple, and those will then be ready to be placed, kept in a wallet or to be put onto an exchange. You asked earlier about which exchange. We're investigating. We haven't made up our minds yet. A lot of it depends on the development of the smart contract, but we're looking at all of the big ones. So Binance, Coinbase, DEX, just to name some of the names that we're looking at. But I don't have the ability to tell you exactly which one it's going to be just yet.
Perfect. We'll keep the community updated on the FinMeUp channels if we also find out. And then, so just to summarize this coin before we get on to the other news in Renogen. So if you invest in this blockchain technology, you basically have access as an investor to invest in helium, in actual helium, as well as being able to, well, it enables a company like Renogen, who is in helium, to actually make it easier for external investors to evaluate the company. Am I summarizing that correctly?
Absolutely spot on. And then you have the right for every token that you hold, you have bragging rights to be able to say that you could fill 8,000 balloons.
That's very cool. And where, just last question, where is that helium stored once I buy that helium?
Now here in so if you are you saying if you buy the token or if
Yes.
you traded the token in?
So if I buy the token and the helium is collected, where's that stored?
So if you buy the token, the beauty about this is that nature actually has the world's perfect storage vessel for helium, and that's called the reserve. So we leave the helium underground. Our plant will be operational by virtue of the fact that we've pre-sold 65% of the anticipated production for phase two under long-term take-or-pay agreements, and then this 35% we've allocated for the token in the spot market. To the extent that you hold the token, we just won't take it out the ground. It sits there and it's ready for you to come and deliver your token, burn the token and collect the helium. Once that happens, then we've obviously, as I'd alluded to, we've agreed the delivery schedule. That delivery schedule is then primed. The end user, the customer, then brings their container, and we fill it up into the container. Now, you don't want to do that until you're literally at the point where you're going to use the helium, simply because storing it is quite tricky. It's very, very tricky. And that's part of the reason why we felt that digitization was the way to go, because an electronic storage of the commodity is significantly cheaper than actually getting it out the ground and trying to keep it at minus 269 degrees Celsius in a vault somewhere. That's just not practical. So storage in the crypto space seemed to make the most sense.
Well, that's very interesting. So the more helium tokens I own, the bigger party I can have with balloons. But in other news, so what's other updates going on in Renogen? Is there anything else that's exciting and something investors or potential investors need to know?
So, I mean, the one thing that we've been quite vocal about is obviously we've been busily working on the updated reserve statement. This has been a project that we've been working on since March of 2019. So, to try and recap for everyone, in March of 2019, as we did the IPO in Australia, we came out with an updated reserve statement, and the updated reserve told us that we had a certain amount of methane and a certain amount of helium in the ground. Subsequent to that, we developed our own in-house proprietary software to help us find where to drill, and where historically we had a 50% success rate, give or take. This new algorithm has led us to drilling 5 out of 6 wells successfully, which, just the simple maths is an 83% success rate. And incidentally, it wasn't the algorithm's fault that we missed on the one. We decided to only let the algorithm choose 5. Humans chose the 6th, so it wasn't the algorithm's fault. But with that, it's allowed us to do a lot of in-depth analysis in terms of identifying where the structures are, what the size of the reservoir is, and really delineating exactly what's going on underground. And this was important for the reservoir engineers. So I'd say, obviously, we've got half-year financials coming out in the next few weeks. I don't think that that's going to be anything of any material consequence by virtue of the fact that we've already released the interims on the various exchanges. So no earth-shattering news there. So the half years are coming out, and then after the half years, we're hoping to be in a position that we'll have final sign off from everyone and their dog on being able to release the announcement and give everyone a bit of an update on what the changes are in the reserves between March 2019 and now, subsequent to all of this work that we've done. So the team is quite excited.
Yeah, very exciting. And just the last question. So for all of you that don't know, Renogen is listed on the JSE, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and the ASX in Australia. So you can actually go check out the share price there if you are interested. But just the last question. So obviously, it is quite difficult for the average investor to evaluate the valuation of Renogen, and many people do that through revenues or through profits or all of that. When can retail investors or overall investors expect the more stable or revenues where we can actually see the revenues in the financial statements and the growth there and the profits and all of that? Is there a certain year that you have in mind, or is that already there? Any insight on that would be appreciated.
Yeah, so originally when we started building the project back in 2019, that was before the onset of COVID, and the scheduled turn-on date back then was meant to be, well, hot commission commencement was meant to be July this year. Obviously, yeah, COVID set us back on a few fronts. So we've had probably around 6 months slippage in the overall timetable, and that means that the hot commissioning now starts in December. So all in all, given the scale of the pandemic, yeah, I think the team's done exceptionally well in terms of project managing this. Hot commissioning commences December. January, once the initial hot commissioning has completed, January will be filling tanks, storage vessels, and getting the plant cold. And then at that point, we go into commercial sales of product from those tanks during the month of February. So I'd say that during the first quarter of next year, you'll start to already see you'll start to see the early signs of exactly what this plant looks like and what the project looks like. Now, bearing in mind that phase one is a tiny little pilot project, and we've alluded to phase two, and I've spoken about phase two on numerous occasions. Phase two is obviously a much bigger operation, and you get economies of scale. The larger you go with cryogenics, the better the economies of scale, and so your profit margins drastically increase the larger you go. Fortunately for us, the concentration of helium is so high that even on a small scale, it's quite profitable, very profitable. But on the large scale, it starts to become very interesting.
Cool. So from December onwards, we can expect a lot of more exciting announcements and financials as well. So yeah, thank you for all this information. It's been really great learning more about this helium cryptocurrency, if that's the right word, but this, or the spot market. But very excited for what Renogen is doing. We'll definitely have more updates and news. Thanks for sharing your knowledge. For everyone watching, thank you. Please consider liking and subscribing. It really goes a long way. Have a great day. Thank you so much, Stefano.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers.